When it comes to safety and quality, our gut tells us one thing, right? More rules, more checking, and perfect 100% compliance has to be better. But what if that common sense is just wrong? What if the data tells us there's a much smarter way to make things safer? Okay, let's dive into this.
And this is really the big question we're tackling. It challenges a fundamental assumption that most of us just take for granted about how things should work. We're going to look at a new science of regulation that pretty much turns this whole idea on its head.
So here's the game plan. We'll start by taking apart that old way of thinking. Then, we'll uncover a really surprising discovery that changed everything. After that, we'll explore the new, smarter approach, look at the tools that actually make it possible, and then see the incredible results out in the real world.
All right, so let's kick things off with where most regulatory systems began, with an idea that feels completely logical on the surface, but as we'll see, has some pretty deep hidden flaws.
The old school view is super simple. You make a big list of rules, and a good, safe organization is one that follows every single one all the time. Inspections are all about hunting for any tiny deviation, any mistake, because the goal is hitting that perfect 100%. It's a pass-fail, completely black or white world.
And this is where you can really see the massive shift in thinking. The old absolute way was rigid. Every rule, whether it was about critical fire safety or just filing some paperwork, was treated as equally important. The new differential paradigm, though, it's flexible, it's data-driven, because it gets one crucial thing. Not all rules are created equal.
Okay, so this brings us to a real turning point. For decades, that absolute paradigm was just the way things were done, no questions asked. And then, a researcher named Richard Feen made a discovery that sent, basically shockwaves through the world of regulatory science.
See, before the late 70s, rules were mostly based on what experts thought would work. But in 1979, Feen decided to actually look at the data. He compared the compliance scores of childcare centers with their actual real-world program quality. And he expected to see a nice straight line. More compliance means more quality. Simple. But that is not what he found.
And this is what his research uncovered. As programs went from low compliance to a pretty high level, quality shot way up, just like you'd expect. But then something really weird happened. That final push, going from something like 98% compliance to a perfect 100%, it didn't increase quality at all. In fact, sometimes quality even went down a little. This is the law of diminishing returns in action. The obsessive focus on minor, trivial rules was actually taking time and resources away from the things that truly mattered.
So this discovery led to a brand new and totally crucial concept: substantial compliance. The data showed that the sweet spot, the point of maximum quality and safety, wasn't at 100%. It was somewhere around 98 or 99%. This is the zone where organizations are following all the really important rules without getting bogged down by the trivial ones.
And this quote from Feeney himself just says it all, doesn't it? It's a direct challenge to our instincts. It suggests that chasing perfection can actually get in the way of achieving excellence. So, if chasing 100% isn't the answer, what is?
Well, that huge discovery gave birth to a whole new philosophy of regulation, one that's focused on efficiency, on data, and on real-world outcomes.
It's called differential monitoring. And instead of a one-size-fits-all approach where every single organization gets the same intense inspection every year, you tailor the oversight. You use data to figure out who's doing a great job and who might need a little more help. It's basically the regulatory version of work smarter, not harder.
So here's how it works. First, you analyze an organization's track record. Are they consistently doing well? Are they in a high-risk industry? Second, you tailor your strategy based on that. The high performers who've earned your trust, they get less intensive, more focused reviews. The lower performers, or the higher risk places, they get more of your attention. This lets you focus your limited time and money where the real risks are, which leads to way better, safer outcomes for everyone.
Now, to make all this work, you can't just guess who is high risk. Regulators needed new tools. They needed data-driven methods to guide their decisions. And two tools in particular became the absolute foundation of this new approach.
First up is risk assessment. And this is really just about finally acknowledging that, as we said, not all rules are equal. Think about a daycare, for example. A rule about proper supervision of children carries infinitely more risk than a rule about having a form filed on the right day. Risk assessment gives more weight to the rules that prevent serious harm, and those become the main focus of inspections.
The second tool, though, is even more powerful: key indicators. By analyzing years and years of data, researchers can find a small handful of rules that are incredibly predictive of overall performance.
It's kind of like when a doctor checks your blood pressure and your heart rate. Those two numbers don't tell the whole story, of course, but they give a really reliable snapshot of your overall health. Well, by checking just, say, 15 or 20 of these key indicator rules, a regulator can know with a high degree of certainty whether an organization is in substantial compliance overall. It's a huge shortcut.
So what's the whole point of these tools? It's all about making the right call and reducing uncertainty. A regulator's decision can either agree with reality or disagree, but the absolute most dangerous outcome is what's called a false negative. That's when an inspector says everything is fine, but in reality, a serious problem exists and was missed. The entire purpose of risk assessment and key indicators is to minimize the chance of that happening.
So what happens when you put all of this together? When you move away from that 100% myth and you adopt a smarter, data-driven system? Well, the results are pretty transformative.
First off, efficiency just skyrockets. Regulators aren't wasting time and resources on organizations that have already proven they can be trusted. This frees up those high performers from a ton of bureaucratic headaches. But, and this is the most important part, it allows regulators to become more like coaches for the organizations that are struggling. They can provide targeted help to get them to improve instead of just punishing them. It's a true win-win.
And this isn't just some academic theory. It's being used everywhere right now. In Georgia's childcare system, inspections focus on a set of high-risk core rules. In hospitals, they use differential pressure monitoring, applying much stricter airflow rules to critical operating rooms than to hallways. And in finance, high-risk institutions get far more scrutiny than stable, low-risk ones. The principle is exactly the same. Focus your energy where the risk is greatest.
And that really brings us to the final, fascinating question. This data-driven revolution shows us that focusing on what truly matters, instead of just chasing some arbitrary ideal of perfection, leads to better, safer, and more efficient outcomes for everybody. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other parts of our work, or even our lives, are just waiting to be transformed by this smarter, not harder way of thinking?